And welcome to The Bottom Line, where we unpack some of the main business and economic stories of the day. President Trump wants something in return for the U.S. support Ukraine has received over the last 3 years. Currently, it's in the form of precious minerals. President Zelenskyy seems happy to provide that access, but assuming that financial and military support continues. Both leaders are keen on the mineral partnership, but the devil is in the detail. To tell us more, I'm joined by Tymofiy Mylovanov, president of the Kyiv School of Economics. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Hello.
So, how quickly are U.S. companies, do you think, able to enter Ukraine to extract what Trump is after?
Well, some of them are already here, or some of them have been here. Some of them, in fact, have been kicked out from Crimea when Crimea was annexed. So in terms of physical presence, that's not an issue. The issue is, or what's the difficulty is, that a lot of these materials, or critical minerals, they require substantive, meaningful investments to get them out of the ground, to purify them, to make them commercially accessible for other elements in the supply chain upstream.
But just to clarify, do you mean that there are American mining companies in Ukraine at the moment?
No, not at the moment, but in the past there have been American oil mining companies.
Okay, so that sort of business relationship has been previously established between the U.S. and Ukraine?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, and the other thing is that it's important to note, perhaps I can ask production to bring up an image of that map, that it's not an insignificant amount of land that holds the most critical minerals that Ukraine holds, and they're currently under Russian occupation. So for the U.S. to get hold of it, some peace deal will have to be struck. And how quickly do you think that actually could happen between the Ukraine and Russia?
The interesting angle here, indeed, that for this investment to be viable or to be maximally profitable for both parties, for both countries, it requires that there is some version of a ceasefire, peace, formal agreement. And in fact, it provides some structural benchmarks to where the front line should go, which demilitarized zones should be there, because indeed some of the critical minerals are under the Russian occupation, some are under Ukrainian control. Ukraine has, even now, with some of the territory lost under the occupation, has substantive amount, serious amount, maybe most of it, available for investment and exploration, but you need a peace agreement. You need actual peace. How soon it will take, how soon can it happen, that depends on the ability of President Trump to find leverage over President Putin. If the threat of sanctions is sufficient to bring Putin to the table, I think the agreement is likely to happen around, the second quarter of this year. It still needs time. If, however, Russia is going to play hardball or hard to get, that might take some more time.
But if the war were to come to a frozen conflict, that would essentially be far from ideal. Because to say that Ukraine would be in a state of peace, I think that would still take quite a lot of time, essentially, for the country to recover from everything that it's been through. Would you say that mining companies would want to invest significant amounts of money for mines to be set up in Ukraine?
With proper insurance, absolutely. And over the last 3 years, even during the war, there have been infrastructure for this business insurance. It's not ideal, not working perfectly, but some industries, therefore, have been investing. Just to give you an example, in 2022, it's not surprising, the amount of investment was in hundreds of millions. In 2023, it was back in low digit, but billions, single digits, and in 2024 is in high single digits. So in investment is happening. A lot of this investment is domestic reinvestment, but there is actually real investment deals happening right now in Ukraine, hundreds of millions, sometimes more. So this is very surprising to a casual observer, but business goes on even during the war. What I think is critical here is not so much whether the peace is formal on the paper or it's a ceasefire, but what are the chances that Russia will restart the war? That's what businesses will worry about, that they can lose their investment. And for that, Ukraine needs security guarantees. So in that sense, President Zelenskyy is very smart strategically, tying this issue into creating incentives for President Trump to provide security guarantees for Russia to secure the American companies' investments, among other things.
So you're basically saying that it's really the likelihood of Russia re-entering Ukraine, and you have absolutely no concerns about insurers being averse to investing in Ukraine when it comes to setting up mining companies.
It's always a question of price point, how much it costs. So, with the US being here and President Trump being so forceful and President Zelenskyy willing to accommodate that idea, I think, yes, there will be risks which will be priced in insurance. On the other hand, the business climate and streamlining and deregulation and the cost of doing business might go, much lower than usually, even in a well-developed country. So I think there are pros and cons, and it can balance out.
And perhaps from a more political angle, economic political angle, what does this mining deal actually mean to President Zelenskyy? Because obviously the deal would be mutually beneficial to both sides in many ways. Different ways, but both sides nonetheless.
Well, strategic interest of the United States, historically the U.S. has always been a strategic ally, but under President Trump we see much more transactional, much more business-oriented approach. So that deal would create incentives for that. But then the usual benefits, you get jobs, you get economy, you get taxes, you get economic growth, you get spillovers, you get other investments which can follow the initial investments. This is actually could be an anchor for the Ukraine rebuilding post-war, and you'll get a lot of businesses around the world, a lot of politicians around the world having a stake in Ukraine succeeding, not just in terms of peace or democracy, but in terms of economics.
Well, the U.S. is not the only ally that has supported Ukraine during the war. Is there a chance that other countries will be able to win contracts in these mines?
Well, absolutely. I think Ukraine is open for business for everyone. There could be some specific agreements, conditionality in exchange of different support, but Europe also has been providing a lot of support and recently has increased its support, especially with the President Trump coming into the office and maybe decreasing through USAID, for example, decreasing humanitarian support to Ukraine. So we see other companies, other governments, other politicians showing leadership and substituting that support, and I think they also will have a claim.
Is this mining negotiation endeavour really more of a political ploy than anything else? We have to keep in mind that the Munich Security Conference is just round the corner, and Trump has expressed his desire to speak both to President Putin and President Zelenskyy. Do we have any idea whether Putin is going to come first or Zelenskyy?
Well, Zelenskyy has already met with President Trump. President Zelenskyy and President Trump have met
but I think there's one more meeting coming up in light of this deal.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That meeting is, and Trump has spoken about it publicly, saying that maybe even this week. So there is some expectation. I have some idea of when that meeting can happen this week, but that's that's not public information. But this hopefully that meeting will happen. I'm not sure there is a meeting with Putin on the books, but definitely there could be calls.
And what about Ukraine's LNG potential? Because what opportunities could that give Ukraine, but also in terms of Europe, assuming that a peace deal is struck?
Yeah, so for example, very specifically, Ukraine has its own capacity to do LNG, but also more standard gas, and we have the gas transmission system connected to Europe. Now, during the war, more of the time was sufficient. Historically, we have been a country which imports gas, but during the war we have been self-sufficient. We imported a little bit for diversification, it was support. But this gas production can be improved, requires investment, and also requires security guarantees, because we have seen Russia attacking our gas exploration facilities as well as other critical energy infrastructure. So yeah, there is both a political and economic value in securing energy production. But it's not just gas, also alternative energy, solar and wind, especially in the south of Ukraine, Mykolaiv and Odessa region, north of the Black Sea. You know, there are up to 300 days of wind, good wind, and up to 240, 270 days of sun. So these are pretty spectacular conditions for the other alternative green energy production.
And just in the future, how could this influence the U.S.'s relationship with China, having accessed these precious elements?
This is an excellent question on multiple fronts. So one angle is that, of course, China has always been trying to enter Ukraine in some ways. We see companies even now during the war being present here and offering all kinds of soft investments. So that is happening. China has been eyeing Ukraine for a while, has been very successful in Belarus North and in Russia with investment. So, you know, that's one aspect. Specifically with respect to critical minerals and rare earth elements, some of them are needed for military or for electronics, even for chips, which are important for AI. For AI specifically targeted chips. So I think the US has its own security problems because it needs to secure some of these elements to be independent from China. So in that sense, I think it should be and is a strategic priority for the United States as well.
Tymofiy, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you.
And we were joined by Tymofiy Mylovanov, president of the Kyiv School of Economics. And thank you for joining us today. I was your host, Marie Cato. Join us every weekday for Business Arena at 5 p.m. CET on TVP World. And for the latest on regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and features, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.